In 2009, a coroner opened a file on Michael Jackson, and what they found inside that report was not what anyone expected. Something that had been sitting inside Michael Jackson's body his entire life, while the world built an entirely different story around it. The coroner documented focal depigmentation across 5 separate areas of his body. That one line confirmed something his doctors had been saying since 1986. Something he told 62 million people on live television in 1993. Something the world heard clearly and then chose not to believe. But that is just the beginning. Because scientists did not stop at his skin. What genetic researchers uncovered next went deeper than any autopsy. They went into his DNA itself, into his chromosomes, and what they found completely rewrites the story of who Michael Jackson actually was. Before we start, hit that like button right now and subscribe. This is the video that finally puts the science on the table. Let's get into it. A genetic genealogist named Sherman McRae began working with a distant paternal cousin of Michael Jackson named Thomas Jackson III. Both men descend from the same ancestor, a man named Nero Jackson. When Thomas submitted his DNA for Y chromosome, testing the results pointed somewhere nobody expected, not Native American ancestry. France, his Y-Na fell into a classification called RFT 121435, overwhelmingly associated with French ancestry. Not marginal, not ambiguous. The science pointed clearly to France. Researchers found a match in the database, a male descendant of a French family named Richbourg, sharing the exact same terminal genetic marker. And when genealogists traced the paper trail to match the DNA, the story that emerged was one of the most painful stories in American history. The Jackson family had always believed their ancestor, July Jack Gale, was born to a Native American father. Joe Jackson's green eyes, the reddish undertones in his appearance. The family held on to this oral history for over a century, with the quiet confidence of people who had heard it so many times it had simply become fact. DNA does not care about oral history. July Jack Gale was not the son of a Native American man. He was the son of his enslaver, a French man named James Joel Richbourg, who died in 1804 and left July in his will, bequeathing him to his daughter like property. That is where the name Gale came from. That is the truth the chromosomes revealed. A family story told for over 100 years, corrected permanently by a single Y chromosome test. Michael Jackson never knew this. The research emerged years after his death, but it is part of who he actually was at a biological level the world never bothered to investigate properly. Now let's talk about the other thing his DNA was doing. The thing he told the world about directly, and the world refused to believe. 1993, Oprah Winfrey. 62 million Americans watching. He said he had vitiligo. That was it. His own words. Live television. 62 million people. And the world largely chose not to believe him, because the story they already had was more entertaining than the boring medical truth. Here is what vitiligo actually is. An autoimmune condition. Michael Jackson's own immune system turned against itself, specifically targeting and destroying melanocytes, the cells that produce melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color. When those cells are destroyed, the skin loses pigment in irregular patches. Unpredictable, uncontrollable. The disease follows its own biological timeline, and the person living with it simply has to follow along. His dermatologist, Dr. Arnold Klein, first noticed the depigmenting patches in 1983. By 1986, he biopsied the skin and confirmed the diagnosis officially. And the biopsy showed not one condition. 2. Vitiligo was the first. The second was discoid lupus erythematosus, another autoimmune disorder, also attacking his skin pigment and texture. 2 separate autoimmune diseases. Simultaneously, both confirmed by biopsy in 1986, 7 years before he told Oprah. The science was never a mystery. It was documented, sitting in a medical file, waiting for anyone willing to look at it rather than the headlines. The tabloids spent years claiming Michael Jackson was deliberately bleaching his skin, that he was erasing himself, that this was a man who hated who he was. Here is what science actually says. There is no known medical procedure that can bleach an entire person's skin evenly and safely. It does not exist. What did exist and what Jackson used under medical supervision was a prescription treatment called monobenzone, FDA approved, specifically designed for patients with widespread vitiligo who have lost pigmentation across the majority of their body. When a person has lost pigmentation across most of their skin, the patchy contrast between white and dark areas creates serious medical complications. Uneven sun sensitivity, increased risk of skin damage, visible scarring from the contrast itself. Depigmentation therapy creates a more uniform skin tone by treating the remaining pigmented patches. This is not cosmetic, it is a medical decision, made with a physician, for a patient with 2 confirmed autoimmune diseases. And here is the detail that makes the tabloid narrative completely collapse. According to research published through Harvard Health, vitiligo may progress in waves. Rapid pigment loss followed by long periods where symptoms stabilize. For some people, it affects small patches and goes no further. For others, particularly those with severe widespread forms, depigmentation eventually covers most or all of the body. Michael Jackson fell into that second category. By the time of his autopsy, the coroner documented depigmentation across 5 separate body areas. That is not a man who chose to change his appearance. That is a man whose immune system had been fighting a losing battle against itself for over 25 years. Michael Jackson was not trying to be someone else. His Dina was doing something to his body that he did not choose, did not want, could not stop. The world chose the more interesting story. Now here is the part of the Dina conversation that nobody has properly addressed. Michael Jackson had 3 children. Prince Michael, born 1997. Paris, born 1998. Blanket, legally named Prince Michael II, born 2002. The acknowledged mother of the 2 oldest is Debbie Rowe Jackson's second wife, who revealed after his death that she was artificially inseminated and subsequently signed away her parental rights as part of a financial settlement. Blanket was born through a surrogate whose identity has never been publicly confirmed. And here is the thing that sits quietly underneath all of it. No official Dina test has ever been publicly conducted or released confirming or denying Michael Jackson's biological relationship to any of his 3 children. The internet has spent years debating this, pointing to photographs, comparing features, making claims based on the children's appearance, specifically their lighter skin, as supposed evidence that Michael could not be their biological father. But those arguments ignore something fundamental. Michael Jackson had 2 confirmed autoimmune diseases affecting skin pigmentation. His own skin changed dramatically over the course of his life due to documented medical conditions. The idea that his children's appearance tells us anything definitive about their biological parentage without an actual Dina test is not science. It is the same kind of casual assumption that the world applied to Michael himself for decades. His children have been asked about this publicly. They have said they are biologically his. They have chosen not to take Dina tests. And that choice deserves exactly the same respect we would extend to anyone navigating a deeply personal question about identity and parentage in front of a world that has always believed it has a right to know everything. Their Dina, whatever it may contain, is theirs. It belongs to them, not to the internet, not to tabloids, not to anyone outside that family. What is worth noting is this. Paris Jackson has spoken openly about her connection to her father, about the grief she has carried since she was 11 years old, about the way she sees him in herself every single day. That is not the language of someone who doubts where she came from. And until science proper, peer-reviewed, consented science says otherwise, the biological record on Michael Jackson's children remains exactly what his children say it is. So here is the complete biological picture of Michael Jackson. 2 autoimmune diseases attacking his skin from the inside, while the world attacked his reputation from the outside. A French ancestral line running through American slavery, through an enslaved man who was the unacknowledged biological son of his enslaver, through over a century of a family not knowing the truth about where they actually came from. 3 children whose Dina belongs to them, and them alone, regardless of what the internet has spent years claiming to know about it. And one final detail worth sitting with. World Vitiligo Day is observed every year on June 25th. June 25th is the date Michael Jackson died. Not for his music, not for his dancing. The scientific community chose to honor him for the accidental courage of living publicly with something the world refused to understand. A skin disease he disclosed openly in his own words on live television to 62 million people became after his death. The very thing science used to remember him. He told us who he was. The science confirmed it at every stage. The autopsy confirmed it. The biopsy confirmed it. The chromosomes confirmed it. The coroner's report confirmed it. The only thing that consistently failed him was the world's willingness to believe something true when something false felt more satisfying. His Dina said this man had 2 autoimmune diseases attacking his body, while the world built a more entertaining lie around the outside. His Na said this family came from France, through slavery, through survival, through a century of not knowing the truth about where they actually began. His Na told the truth the entire time. We just weren't listening. If this changed the way you think about him, hit that like button right now. It gets this video in front of people who need to see it. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. This is exactly the kind of story we tell here.